Hello and welcome to the School of Evangelism. My name is Jordy, and today we're going to be taking you through lesson 4 of part 1, which is explaining man's problem, sin. Explaining man's problem, sin. Now, first off, we have to understand God's purpose for man. And so to enjoy friendship with God, we go to the book of Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 30. To share in God's rule of the world, Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 to 17. Now, what is the nature of sin? To know more about the rebellion against God and his commandments, we go to Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 to 12. And then we have examples of sin. Doing wrong, Psalm chapter 5, verse 14, James chapter 2, verse 11. Not doing right, James chapter 4, verse 17. And doing the doubtful, Romans chapter 14, verses 23. Now, what is the extent of sin? We must understand that all are sinners. So in Romans 3:23, we realize that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Then we sin in all areas. We sin in all areas. We sin by our thoughts, Jeremiah 17, verse 9. We sin by our words, James chapter 3, verses 1 to 10. By our deeds, as in acts of commission, 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Acts of omission, James 4, verse 17. And by our very state or our very being, Ephesians chapter 2, verses 2 to 3, and John chapter 8, verse 34. Now, what is the result of sin? What is the result of sin? Separation from God. Isaiah chapter 59, verse 2. Slavery to sin. Romans chapter 6, verse 17, and John chapter 8, verse 34. And death. Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death. Now, what has been man's attempt to solve the sin problem? And note how all these attempts fail to remove the results of sin. Good works. Isaiah chapter 64, verse 6. Religious activities as penance. Romans chapter 3, verses 20. Education. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 19 to 20. Determination. Romans chapter 7, verses 21 to 25. And rationalization. 1 Corinthians 1:19 and Colossians 2:8. And all these attempts fail to remove the results of sin. Now, what is God's solution to the sin problem? Jesus dying for us. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 5 to 6, and Romans chapter 5, verse 8. To bring us back to God. 1 Peter 3:18. To set us free from the power of sin. Romans 6:18. To give us eternal life. John 3:36. And this brings us to the end of lesson 4. Our memory verse is Romans 5:8. But God commended his love towards us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Thank you for watching lesson 4, and see you in lesson 5. Bye.